Shalom. I am Rabbi Nathan Davidovich speaking to you on behalf of the webyeshiva.org, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. I'm going to be talking about one of the many things that we learned from this week's Torah reading, the Parsha Shoftim. And what I'll be talking about is a message from the Torah in Shoftim that is so relevant today and so important for our lives today. And that is the message of the importance of unity and the detrimental effects of a lack of unity. The Torah reading was talking about judges and their functions, describe that how you approach and bring certain cases for a decision. And the sentence that talks about that, one of the sentences, says, Ki yapale mimcha davar lemishpat. When something is difficult for you to understand, something that needs a judicial decision, bein dam ledam, bein din ledin, whether it's regarding something in dealing with blood, dealing with money matters, bein nega lenega, different kind of skin infections that were determined by the Kohen, who was the judge. Divrei ribos b'sharecha, things of dispute in your communities. And the last three words are what I'm going to be focusing on. Divrei ribos b'sharecha, matters of dispute, of disagreement in your community. And Rabbi Shia Tursky, Avram Tursky of blessed memory, he brings a midrash that says that the heavenly angels ask God a question that many of us, certainly here in Israel, may be asking God ourselves this very day. And the question that was asked of God is why? Why has so much Jewish blood been shed? And why Jewish people suffer such harsh judgments and exile? What is the reason for that? And the Midrash says that God replied, because there is no peace among the Jewish people. And the Arizal, the Holy Ari, says that the sentence that I just quoted, talking about when you have a matter of dispute in your communities, he says that is the answer to the question that the angels were asking, why so much Jewish blood has been shed. He says when the Torah talks about matters of dispute in your communities, the Torah is talking about the dissension, the disagreement between Jews, the lack of unity. Here in Israel, unfortunately, this was certainly demonstrated before the horrific acts of October 7th of last year that led to the massacre and horrendous torture and mutilation of over 1,200 Jewish people, and led to the capture of 250 hostages, over 100 of which are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. Unfortunately, this is certainly seems to be, God forbid, being repeated right now, this dissension, where we have people not able to agree with one another. And it's not a problem if you don't agree. We're all entitled to our own individual opinions. But to disrespect one another, to call one another, one fellow Jew, a horrible name, to hate somebody because of what they're doing or not doing, that is exactly what the Torah is telling us. That is exactly the thing that causes Jewish blood to be shed. And believe me, our enemies know this. This past weekend, we had the horrific news of 6 beautiful children of ours being slaughtered by Hamas. Hamas knew that it would create division with the Jewish people and wanted to create the division because our enemies know that if there's no unity among the Jewish people, we become weak. And Rabbi Twersky, in his comments about this, he says, we fail to learn from our history. The Talmud tells us that if we would have unity, if there were true unity between the Jewish people, we would be invincible. No nation on the world could touch us. But he points out that we constantly fail to refuse to recognize the cause of our own problems and, like an insane person, keep repeating the same pattern. And he brings an example from the prophets, from the Tanakh. In the book of Joshua, with regard to Jericho, the sentence reads in chapter 6, sentence 27, it says, Vayishba Yoshua be'eshahi lemor. At that time, Joshua pronounced an oath. And he says, Oror ho'ish lifnei Hashem, asher yakum uvana esoir hazot. Anybody who undertakes to fortify this city of Jericho is hereby under God's curse. B'bechoro yisodeh v'tzarav v'tziero yatziv delaseha. He says its foundations will be laid at the cost of their firstborn child, and its gates set up at the cost of their youngest. And then you move, after hearing this curse, we move to Kings 1, Malachim Aleph, chapter 16, verse 34. Talks about Chiel Beis Eli. So in these days, Chiel the Beis Eli, as Jericho Be'avorim, he fortified Jericho. Yista Uvishagi Uvishgagu Tsairo Hitzi de Loseha. He laid his foundations at the cost of Aviram, his firstborn son, and set its gates in place at the cost of Sigab, his youngest, in accordance with the words that God had spoken through Joshua that I read at the beginning. We didn't heed the words. We knew what was going to happen. He knew what was going to happen and disregarded it. Rabbi Twersky points out in his work of treating alcoholics, he regularly sees people who refuse to recognize that their drinking is the cause of their problems. Unfortunately, it often requires the person to reach the point of, quote, rock bottom, when they can recognize that they're the culprit. And he asks, weren't the horrors of the Holocaust sufficiently severe to show us that we have reached rock bottom? Weren't the horrors of October 7th severe enough to be our rock bottom? Let's not repeat it. Let's work towards loving one another, disagreeing respectfully, not hating one another, not calling names to one another, but treating each and every single fellow Jew with respect. We're coming into Rosh Hashanah. We're just preparing for it now. This is the time to correct our actions. Thank you for listening on behalf of befallen.org. I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbat, a Shabbat that we will hear, hopefully, good tidings, and a Shabbat where we can learn to come together. Please, for our own sakes, let's have Achdut. Shabbat Shalom.